principles. I'm not talking about rules. I'm talking about principles. I'm talking about, like no swearing, no demeaning, no derogatory remarks, but encouragement. And that goes from the parents to the coaches and back, always creating that environment of joint support. Because when you have that, then the kids feel that it's okay to be in that circle because it's fun, because what they do is appreciated. So that's one specific that I believe is super important at the minor level, but it's also applicable at the university level where I've worked for 20 plus years, where there isn't, like even uncanny, it's uncanny in a way, but like university students have parents and they should also be aligned with what's being put forward by the coach. So coming back to the minor level, where I think the whole ball of wax starts forming, it is important to have a vision for this season. Where do we want to be at the end of the season? How do we want the kids to feel? What would we want them to see? Like one of the things that I'd like to think anyways, because that's one of the main goals is development. You want to develop the athlete not only on the hockey skills, because like your field is hockey, but also their personal, interpersonal relationship, helping them realize that in the end, how they behave affects and impacts and either reduces the performance or magnifies the performance. So one of the things that I feel is very important is to set up that mode of operation right off the bat. It should not be left to work on later. It should be once the team is formed and the parents are identified, they should all be involved in discussing how things are going to be done, so that during the season, you know what to expect from the point of view of behavior. Now, one thing.
Hey, excuse me, Ray. Uh, I'm curious here because I think everybody's coaching at a competitive level here. And most of us are involved in the community right now. And I'm just most curious about, how do you get everybody on the same page? Like, is it you, a specialist, coming in and helping? Is it the head coach's responsibility to take the bull by the horns? Um, what can we expect? What's reasonable?
Well, I'm thinking here of, like house league, then you get the A, double A, triple A. I think that when you get into the higher levels, there should definitely be involvement from somebody from the outside to and I'm going by my own experience where I've been brought in. Like if I name Larry Ring, you know who Larry Ring is. He was his daughter was involved in minor hockey at a very high level. She was a superstar, but the whole organization, the league, brought me in to work with the coaches and the parents to establish that common understanding of how we behave in order to not only respect each other, but also demonstrate to the kids how it should be done so that they are not surprised if there is a situation that evolves and, like they are called on the carpet because the preset criteria, like for instance, being on time, like for instance, no yelling at your kid uh, while they are performing, no. Uh, I'm thinking in terms of verbal, but not physical, but verbal assault on a coach or a referee by the parents, so that the kids see, like what they see is what they do, type of thing. You, what you do will speak a lot louder to the child or the youth in this case than what you say. You can talk all you want, but they're watching your moves. So coming back to this concept of how are we going to behave, it's critical, it's fundamental, and I think that it is one of the keys to success on a sustained basis.
Great. Peter has his hand up.
Yeah, Ray, I have a question for you in terms of once this is all in place, which and I think it's great, and something I've been familiar with for a while, and now quite a bit, with a grandson that plays, watching and being around the youth organizations. What about the parent that refuses, and this is reality of our sport, unfortunately,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're gonna have that parent who listens to everything that you say, hears it, however, still goes off the deep end consistently in games, yelling at their kid, yelling at the officials, and typically, for whatever reason, at least at the younger levels, that kid is usually a fairly high performing player. So no one wants to do anything about it. And it's just people just distance themselves from that person in the stands, but they're polluting the entire situation, including the organization, whether people say about the team, the other kids who are doing nothing, but are guilty by association. So how do we, like, at the end of the day, like how do we enforce that when coach is going to make 1,000 excuses because that's his one or two best players?
My experience, like I have coached at the minor level, way back. And then I have been on the bench watching and in the stands watching, and I've done work to overcome that kind of stuff. So you're right. This is a real problem. But what I have found is that if we do this preseason gathering of all the parents and the coaches, there's magic there. Because what happens is that the parents will monitor and supervise and redress that kind of stuff. You, as a coach, do not have to do anything because the parents take care of it.
Yeah, but I'll just push back because you're my best friend and it's your kid doing it. You're my buddy. I'm those people, they don't address it.
Uh, in my experience, it's the contrary because most people are good. Most people are good. Do you agree? There
Well, yeah,
are a few
we
bad
like
eggs.
that for sure. Yeah.
There are a few bad eggs. And I have seen, like I remember in my coaching career, it'd be one or two parents. It's not the whole group. Most, as a matter of fact, I've seen it at the university level too, where people would talk to me about that person. And the idea is to empower and enable, like a parent, like you just talked about, to understand that if something like that happens, people around them are going to ask that they tone it down, and it's acceptable. And like Rome wasn't built in one day, so
Sure.
it's not the first time that will solve it. But some people, I have seen some people that like if we talk about minor levels, uh, they feel so bad about all of a sudden going against what had been understood and, by the way, written. Okay. Like what I'm talking about, those operating principles, they're written, and every parent, coaches has a copy. And this is like the principles by which we operate. It's not rules, it's principles. And principles are forever. Rules can be broken, but principles. And what happens is that, like I have seen a person like that walk out of the arena by themselves because they didn't want to look so stupid to the other parents, because like they couldn't hold back, like it was beyond them, so they just walked out of the arena, took a break, went and breathed some fresh air so that they would get a hold of themselves. The beauty of involving people, the people that surround, that support the team, is that the coach doesn't have to do it, the referees don't have to do it, the league management, it's the parents that will ask that person to either shut up or don't come, leave, because that's not what is conducive. And like you said, I've seen it with my own eyes. I remember being an assistant coach in Sarnia, and there was this kid that was like all world. And, like the coach, whom I knew quite well, uh, would play him, like three times as much as another player. And of course, that caused some difficulties. I was not the head coach, and I didn't have the science and the wisdom that I have now. But I observed what happens when it's like favoritism, if you want, but it's more than favoritism, because the coach wants to win. Like it's a mindset, and thinks that that guy is going, that little player, guy or gal, is going to make the difference. And I have seen it at the university level too. And see, like if we have set the tone at the beginning of the season and agreed that this is how we're going to do it. And by the way, uh, what what I know works tremendously well is to review those principles uh, at a regular interval, so that people are reminded. After all, when everything is said and done, it's about the players, isn't it? It's not about the parent.
Yeah, I mean, it should be. I mean, and I think that the challenge, at least down here at the youth level, uh, it seems to be exactly what you're talking about. And I mean, you're right. You're spot on. You have to have the enforcement or reinforcement of what those principles are. But like I say, when you have issues where coaches are getting out of hand, parents are getting out of hand, and it's okay to them because, and you've probably heard this phrase too, which drives me nuts. And they say, well, hey, it's hockey. Well, what does that even mean? Right? What does that even mean? But that seems to be the challenge here is parents way too involved. And I think a lot of it comes from the cost of it. Because because it's so expensive down here, Ray, to
Oh,
play,
yeah.
the we feel like we have an investment, right? It's like I spent $80,000 for a brand new Ford pickup truck and my radiator goes a month and a half in. I'm not happy, right? I'm irate because I just spent 80 grand. I'm getting nothing on my return like I expected. So they now look at it that way. They look at it as a return on an investment rather than the experiential piece, which is multiple times more important and more impactful and lasting than any win or loss in a game.
The challenge, and that's why it's so important to all be in the know and all agree to the principles, because in my book, and it was always in the back of my mind, but about 15 years ago, I developed it with the women's hockey team at the university. And it's about having values that everybody buys in. So, and that's something that communication is so crucial. It's unbelievable how it makes a difference when people talk, because I don't want to be derogatory, but there are some bad apples in the group. They get uh, exposed when everybody says this is how we're going to do it. And I understand. I hear what you're saying. I paid a lot of money, therefore I should get something out of it. But if we start on the basis or the principle that the player will be so much more if the team is together than if the player is by himself or herself trying to be the hero. And that's a discussion that I would suggest the coach or coaches must impart on the parents, that like you'll get your money's value if you foster a team approach, because it's a team game, right? It's not an individual game, and we're talking about hockey here. You talk with a tennis player or like anything that's is individual. It's different. A swimmer, it's different. When you're in a team, the team is more important than the player. And I think that some of those people that we're talking about that are difficult have not been schooled and helped to understand that, if I use your analogy of investment, to have your kid play in a certain league, if you don't think in terms of the group, then the best that you can expect, if 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 it's respected, is that you'll get recognition for it. But the likelihood of somebody saying, like, I paid and therefore I should, uh, will kind of be thrown to the side. And you make sure of that if you involve everybody in setting up the criteria, the boundaries, so that during the season, if something like that happens where somebody kind of goes off the deep end, somebody right away will remind that person, what are we here for? Are we here for ourselves, or are we here for the kids?
Now,
And
when you set that up, Ray, do you have is there anything in there how you address essentially the parent that will not get on board? Because we know that, and the reality is there are those there are those individuals get on board. They've read everything, talked about,
Something's happening here. We have echo.
yes, I think those individuals have
Tom, is it yours? Okay. Ray, I just wanted to sort of bring us back to reality. You're a specialist. You come in and do this is your work. This is your area. And we've got Mike on, NCAA coach. And I'm curious, Mike, here, when it comes to leadership at your level and coaching at your level, how much of a role can you play in shaping your culture to create that synergistic environment? What are the roadblocks for you? How do you deal with it?
Can I answer Peter's question before we hear Mike? Peter was asking, what do you do when you lay out that system and, like, is there a consequence if somebody is going to infringe on? And I say to you, Peter, yes. Before the season starts, you talk about consequences. What would happen if somebody kind of, I'm going to exaggerate, jumps over the board and goes on the ice after the referee or something like that, or jumps over the board and goes after the coach? Exaggerate, but to make a point. And you discuss those before the season starts because you know that it may happen. People forget. And so you set up your consequences ahead of time. So people know when they kind of deviate, bang, you apply the consequence and everybody's okay. Like that person may not like it, but that's what was agreed.
So it really goes back to your point about strong leadership, right? Because if you don't have the leader who supports that,
the idea is that my point of view, and linking it to what you just said, Wally, yes, I'm a specialist, but what I talk about is common sense. It's as simple as establishing, and now to your point, Peter, a coach should rely on his assistant and the parents to create an environment. The coach should not be the sole person that has to say, you shit, get out of here or whatever. It should be like the group saying, you don't belong here, chum. And consequences, whatever they've been determined to be, are applied. Like the coach should not be the one that has to be the police. Do you agree?
yes, I mean, again, you should, like you said, you should have a culture that you create standards throughout the team that it should take care of itself. But I think because we live in a wonderfully imperfect world, and it is wonderful in so many ways, but it is still imperfect. And even the nicest people out on the street, their behavior can become completely unacceptable.
Unhinged.
Yeah.
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 But you see, if you have discussed these deviations ahead of time so that people know that if they sin, they're going to go in the sin bin. And now there is no discussion. This is what has been, and it applies to players too. Like if a player kind of deviates from what has been established for the team, he goes in the stands. And that's one of the ways to ensure, it's called rigor, it's called discipline, It's called consistency.
Yeah.
And when you have that, the first half of the season may be difficult, but I'll tell you, when you get to the end, you get a champion. Oh, you have a